What's up, guys? So it's been a while since I made a YouTube video. I believe the last YouTube video I made was just kind of me doing like a storytelling video, and then before that it was an EMT video, which I do plan on making another EMT video in the future, so be on the lookout for that. Lately I've had a break from school. We have winter break right now, so thought it'd be the perfect time to make another video. And it's always been on the back burner of mine to make a book review video. With the extra time I've had, I've been slowly reading some more books, which is actually a New Year's resolution of mine. So, trying to stack more books on my bookshelf. For today's first book review, I'm going to do a book review on one called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carl S. Dweck. She has a PhD in psychology. I'm a big fan of self-improvement books. Also on that note, I like to read books. This is just my personal thing, but I like to read books from credible sources. She has a PhD in psychology, which is just good for me to know. I'll definitely read books from people that, don't have like a PhD or anything like that. But I just kind of take it with a grain of salt. I feel like storytelling and experiences kind of just feel more genuine when it comes from somebody that has like a background in education, or maybe they're a war veteran. It's just more interesting to me. But then again, I'm not that picky. I'll still read a lot of other books. But this book was actually lent to me by a coworker of mine. So shout out to Asa. He let me borrow it, but I pretty much own it now. So if it wasn't for that guy, then I wouldn't be doing this video right now. And ironically, he was lent this book by a firefighter, which is pretty cool. So it's in good hands wherever you are, Asa. So with that being said, I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing 5-star reviews on books that I've read. If I were, this book would be very, very high up there. It's a great book. I will kind of give like a background on how I identify with these books. Now, this book in general talks a lot about the growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Now, what is a growth mindset? What is a fixed mindset, you might be asking? So, in my definition, very simple definition, a fixed mindset is having a limited belief in what you can do. Now, that can be anything from how smart you are to how fit you are, your looks. It could be anything. You're not going to think anything outside that box that you're limiting yourself in. The growth mindset believes that, yes, you might feel like you're in this box, but you have the ability to get past that, think outside the box, to get fit, to be smarter, to learn more. And I identified with this book immediately because I honestly grew with the fixed mindset. I didn't have parents that really pushed me, or especially with education, and fitness-wise, I just didn't really care. I didn't think I was able to run this fast, or play this sport, or be on this team. It didn't really hit me till I was maybe in my late 20s when I started realizing that I could possibly do more. But if and when you read this book, it's definitely gonna make you think twice about all that. It's a very inspirational book, and it hits that note right away. Now, I won't really dive too deep into the chapters in this book. What's really cool is that every chapter in this book is pretty much a different category or a different circumstance that you can apply the growth mindset, or if you're applying the fixed mindset, where you can be applying these in. So, for example, in chapter 1 it talks about sports. Actually, no, chapter 1's more so just general mindsets. It kind of just explains what the fixed mindset and the growth mindset is. Early on, I believe it's chapter 3 or 4, it talks about sports. Now, we're all pretty familiar with, snowflake culture. It's a term that's been thrown out there for a couple of years now. And that's basically believing that, every kid gets a participation trophy, even if they lost a championship or even if they did horrible in that game. They're still going to get praise for it. It's kind of sugarcoating if you think of it. And I've personally never really fallen into that mindset. If I lost a game, I would realize I probably sucked, or like, I know I did bad, but there are kids that grow up and even if they did horrible, they're not going to realize that they could have done better or they could have won if they had done this or taken this advice. And this book touches on that, which I think is great. I don't have too many critiques on this book. There's maybe one that I'll get into later on, but that's a really good chapter once you get to that. And if you grew up playing sports, then I think you'll understand right away what she's talking about. It uses a lot of real life examples too. And when I say real life examples, I mean in this chapter it talks about coaches, athletes. Michael Jordan is in there. There's a famous quote. I think it was said in this book, but it's said everywhere online. I've missed so many shots, but only that one that matters. Or Wayne Gretzky says another quote about missing so many shots. So it kind of touches on that regard. Same with any other celebrity or actor that has failed. I think Oprah Winfrey is another good example. She had a really rough life, but she was able to overcome that, and she's incredibly successful now. So it's really, really cool. Dweck uses really great examples when it comes to storytelling and the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. She even uses examples on figures that use a fixed mindset, especially on the chapter of business. Now, I believe it's chapter 5 where it talks about business. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into this chapter, but it talks about Enron and CEOs and corporations and how damaging their mindsets were to the corporation and the company. If you're into not really stocks and bonds, but if you're into business or like maybe you're a manager at a job right now, I feel like you'd really identify with that chapter because it talks about how they treated their employees, how they treated their team. I believe there's a term that she uses called groupthink, which is basically, kind of thinking like a sheep, not really hearing what your team has to say. I've been in a manager position before, so I really liked that chapter as well, but I didn't really identify too much with that because, like I said, I'm not really a business-oriented person. I'm more of like a team player. I value leadership for sure, which is why I did like that chapter, but if you come from a background like that, I think you'd really identify with that one as well. And once again, her examples are great. She dives very deep into Enron and how it failed and the greediness of, kind of having that power struggle, if that makes sense. After that chapter, it talks about love. Now, the only critique I have in this book would probably be about that one. Now, when she talks about the growth mindset and love, she uses the example of, a failed marriage, and I believe the very first paragraph in there, she talks about a woman who was in a failing marriage. She was at the wedding, and then the groom just didn't show up. He went to an island somewhere, spent all the money, whatever, and then the bride ended up having a growth mindset, and she enjoyed the wedding by herself. She ended up moving on, met the guy of her dreams, and then she didn't let it destroy her life, which is actually great. She kind of does mention that if you're in a tough relationship that you should kind of have a growth mindset in that regard, meaning that you can fix it. Now, maybe I took that the wrong way, but my only critique with that chapter would be, if something's not working, then the growth mindset should be applied where, you can try to fix it, of course, but if not, then you can move on, if that makes sense. I don't think you should stay with somebody that's not right for you. And the way I took it, I think she should have maybe elaborated more on that, if that makes sense. I think she should have maybe explained that more, like have your limits when it comes to relationships. Don't just have the growth mindset thinking, yes, I can fix this damaged relationship. I think you should try, and then if it doesn't work, you've tried for however long, which I'm hoping isn't too long, then, move on and realize you can get better. So that's how I took it. I'm not saying it's a bad chapter at all. I just think that she maybe could have explained that a little better. But in general, when she talks about relationships and love, she does talk about not thinking that you're going to be stuck in this bad relationship forever, you know, thinking that it's fixable, you know, there's counseling, there's different ways to speak to your partner, to communicate, to show affection, which is great. You know, the way I took it was a little different. I just think when it comes to love and relationships that the growth mindset can be applied in your relationship and outside. So that's what I think about that one. Chapter after that talks about, you know, essentially faking it until you make it. And that one was really good as well. You know, it actually talks about the fake growth mindset, which is pretty cool. Now, you know, Carl Dweck has a reputation, you know, from this book and just from being a professor, and she talks a lot about students that she's had and, you know, how she's affected their lives in a positive way. And there were some students that she had that had the growth mindset, but it wasn't a true growth mindset. You know, it was like the fake it till you make it kind of mentality. And she talks about the damaging effects of that. And I think that's a very important chapter as well, because you kind of see that a lot. You know, I like I said, I'm a big fan of self-improvement in general, and I've heard that term thrown around a lot, you know, the fake it till you make it thing. And after reading this book, you'll realize that that's not always the way to go, and then that could also be damaging. And that was new to me. I didn't really know that. I didn't know that could really harm you in any way. So that was pretty good. There's another chapter in this book about parenting. Now, I heavily identified with this book because I'm a parent myself. Parenting in regards to how to communicate with your children, how children learn, and how some children just are born a certain way, how they kind of are more susceptible to having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, depending on, you know, the environment that they live in, the parents that they have, obviously, you know, the nature versus nurture thing. And that one was great. You know, if you are a parent or if you have a nephew or a niece, that chapter is going to be good. You know, I apply the growth mindset to my daughters all the time. One thing that really stuck with me is that, you know, kids, and this is why I personally believe, I feel kids are just sponges of their environment, especially their parents. And if you embody the growth mindset, they're going to see that. So one thing that Dweck mentions in this book kind of heavily is to make sure that you're applying the growth mindset in all regards, and just keep in mind that your children are there too. So, you know, you can be preaching to them all day, but if you don't do it, you take a phone call and you're freaking out on the phone over something small, your kids are going to be like, where's the growth mindset? So that, you know, that really stuck with me. This book ends on a really good note as well. It ends on how to maintain the growth mindset and not the fixed mindset, how to avoid the fixed mindset in the future and how to maintain the growth mindset. And essentially it talks about challenging yourself. And this book, like I said, was very inspirational, and you're going to finish reading it wanting to do more, wanting to learn more, wanting to push yourself. Not trying to sound too corny here, but she really ends it on a note like that. And I definitely took it as, you know, this makes me want to do more. You know, this makes me not only want to read more, because that was a resolution of mine, but, you know, it makes me want to continue going to school and continue working out, continue eating healthy. And it's going to support the goals that you might have set a couple years ago, or you set this year, you know, new year 2022. So it ends on a really good note. And yeah, I highly recommend, you know, mindset. I recommend any other self-improvement book. Like I said, I'm going to be doing more self-improvement books in the future, but this one gets a high rating from me. If you're a fan of self-improvement, please go pick up this book. Like I said, I heavily identify with this book. You're going to learn a lot. And last thing too, what helped me is highlighting things. I mean, there's so many gems in this book. This book, when it was lent to me, the firefighter that bought this book, he highlighted stuff. I think my coworker highlighted some things, and I continued to highlight more. So, you know, really great gems in this book. Once again, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carl S. Dweck. She does have another book that I might check out, but for now, we'll just start off with this. And yeah, hope you get to check it out.